Comic books allow us to suspend our knowledge of reality so that we can have fun stories where basically anything can happen. Some Marvel heroes have great explanations for how their powers work, some do not, and that's what we are talking about today. Now we're starting off this list a little weird and talking about Hawkeye. Clint Barton is essentially just a regular human man, but despite that, he's considered a power level 4 according to Nick Fury's intel. This is due to his incredible level of skill and ability. Hawkeye is a master of archery in the use of regular bows, longbows, compound bows, and crossbows, with basically perfect accuracy, able to fire multiple arrows at a single target in a few seconds, hitting multiple targets in a few quick strokes, and directly hitting small targets in the greatest of distances, but he also has near perfect precision with any aimed or thrown weapon. He is at the peak level of human eyesight possible. He is in peak athletic human condition with peak strength, endurance, and reflexes. He is an expert acrobat, tactician, and master martial artist. And it's seemingly all from just practice and training really hard. To show you how ridiculous this is, in Avengers Volume 3 number 14, Hawkeye was cornered by about 17 marksmen and he took them all down without taking a single life. In Hawkeye Volume 4 number 1, Clint ran into a wanted criminal in a bar and he took him down completely silently by, get this, fracturing his neck with a deck of cards. And last but not least, you know that Winter Soldier scene from the MCU with Captain America taking out all those dudes in an elevator? Hawkeye did the same thing in Volume 2 number 3 of his own comic, and that was way before Cap, who is a super soldier, I will remind you, got the credit. The mutant and original X-Man, Forget-Me-Not, might be a case of people judging a book by its cover, because he doesn't really look too menacing if we're being honest. And to be fair, his powers do also sound pretty lame at face value. Basically, this mutant can't be remembered by anyone, and sometimes anything he meets as soon as he's out of sight. And as sad as this must be for him in his personal life, Forget-Me-Not can use this power to his advantage in huge ways in the right circumstances. In one case, he's even able to dupe all of X-Force when the team has to form an elaborate plan just to track him down. They're only able to finally catch him by having Dr. Nemesis record himself explaining to the team the existence of Forget-Me-Not as they search for him. The only caveat to this whole tedious process is that the maintenance bots, along with, I'm assuming, any computer automated system, can actually remember Forget-Me-Not if it doesn't get glitched out, which sort of weakens the potential of his powers. But again, don't be fooled. You know when the X-Men seem to just miraculously figure out a secret or a previously unknown way to defeat an almost unbeatable opponent? 90% of the time, that's just Forget-Me-Not, and the X-Men just forget him but not the information that he gives to them. Now, Nina Thurman is a mutant weapons expert and mercenary under the name Domino. She was introduced in the early 90s as a member of X-Force. Now, Domino is the survivor of a bunch of unethical scientists who are trying to create the perfect weapon. It's the tale as old as time, really, but this means Domino has all the talents and skills you would expect of an expert mercenary or secret agent. But we're here to talk about powers, and Domino's are unique to say the least. Domino has probability manipulation powers, meaning she's almost always lucky. She exudes at all times a subconsciously activated field that alters the probability of occurrences in her line of sight into her favor. This means that whenever she is stressed, excited, or focused on something, things will probably go well for her, and quite poorly for her opponents. Now, there is a caveat to this. She needs to actively be trying to help herself for her powers to work. So, like, if debris is falling from the sky and was about to hit her in the head, she would still be hurt if she stood still. However, if she tried to avoid them, she would move perfectly to avoid each and every piece about to hit her. Now, the full potential of Domino's abilities hasn't actually been fully realized as of yet, and Marvel has a knack for updating powers whenever they want, but with an ability to be lucky, there's only a finite amount of things you cannot do. Now, while the powers of Domino are still fresh in your minds, this is a perfect opportunity to talk about Iska the Unbeaten. Iska also has a form of limited psychokinesis, which is probability manipulation, or known as the power of luck, which is probably one of the most unexplainable powers because we can't even really say that luck is for sure a real thing. But Iska takes it one step further than Domino into ridiculousness with the power of being literally unable to lose. Iska has the power to always win, no matter what. Whether that is in individual one-on-one contests, votes, wagers, or even just larger battles where she's a member of a group. In contests of skill, her powers might give her the talent she needs to win, or she might just win through improbable circumstances, quote unquote. In larger battles or even wars, her powers detect the probability of both sides winning and have literally led her to defect from the losing side and join the winning side, meaning she still personally wins. It's not that we don't necessarily understand it. I mean, I don't understand it. It's just that it can't even properly be explained without sounding just ridiculous. I love her though. I love that character. Next up, the Inhuman known as Reader has a very fitting name, as he possesses the really cool ability to make whatever he reads actually real, which if you think about it should be practically impossible and is also a truly incredible power. Reader is a part of a group of Atalan Inhumans who live on Earth that call themselves the Lore. Now, because of Reader's potentially immense power, the people of the Lore tribe took his eyes out, making him unable to actually read things. On top of this, Reader has mental blocks in place that stop him from accidentally rewriting reality by reading the wrong things. Now, how does he still read with no eyes? The same way blind people do. Braille. Reader carries around Braille cards that have single words on them that allow him to do different things in combat and in given situations. For example, he has a card that says see in Braille that, when read, allows him to see through the eyes of other people. Or the back and freeze cards, which allow him to go back in time or pause time respectively. He basically has reality warping powers, but he does have a weakness in the form of only being able to use 3 words a day that gradually become less and less powerful, which is quite the nerf, but it also makes the whole this makes no sense thing even stronger. Christina Anderson has an ability that quite a few characters in comic books have. That would be the ability to shrink. Thumbelina can reduce herself down to about 1/4 of an inch tall. Now that ability is perfectly fine in my eyes. Like I said, lots of characters can do this. My problem with Thumbelina, and also some other shrinkers, is how the heck do they retain their full size strength when they get smaller? Or, in Thumbelina's case, how does she get stronger when she shrinks? I'm sorry to try and bring physics into any debate about superheroes and their various powers, but it makes absolutely no sense in the laws of physics that someone who is smaller can be more strong than when they were the regular size. Ants, for example, if they were the size of a person, they would be insanely strong, as they are able to carry 20 times their body weight. So that's like an average human being able to carry a small SUV. But since ants are so small, that means they can carry like a leaf. Thumbelina should not be able to knock someone out when she is 1/4 of an inch tall. I'm sorry, it just shouldn't make sense. Speaking of which, Robbie Rodriguez, who goes by El Guapo, is a mutant from the Marvel Universe, but that kind of opens up a whole bunch of questions, because Robbie doesn't seem to have any powers of his own, unless you consider his symbiotic relationship with a flying skateboard a superpower. His wiki page refers to this as idiosyncratic manipulation, suggesting that Robbie actually has total control over his skateboard, but the problem with that is that his skateboard has also acted of its own accord, like when it beat him up for cheating on his girlfriend. Now, an argument could be made that perhaps that's his own subconscious beating himself up for doing the wrong thing, but that's just a me theory, and Marvel did not state this to be true at all, or really even explain his ability in any way, shape, or form. It's not telekinesis, and the board seems to have a mind of its own. You explain it to me, because I can't. Adam Narimani, or Adam X, was a genetically created hybrid of both Emperor Deken of the Shi'ar Empire and Catherine Summers from Earth, created in an attempt to introduce more genealogies to the Shi'ar Empire. Now, just as his origin is unique, so are his powers. Adam has the ability of electrokinetic hemopyrokinesis, or if you don't want to have a stroke, you can say sanguine combustion, which also sounds super cool. It basically means that he can send an electric surge through oxygenated blood, which leads to ignition of the electrolytes present in the blood, causing a person to burn from the inside out, which could result in a little subtle warming effect, which is lovely, or it could completely disintegrate a person, so there's a lot of wiggle room here. But thanks to his Shi'ar side of things, he also has enhanced strength, agility, reflexes, stamina, speed, vision, and healing. You couple all that with his awesome fighting skill and the cool cybernetic retractable claws, and he's just someone you don't want to mess with, but also, he can set fire to your blood. In our runner-up spot today, Chamber, or Jonathan Evans Starsmore, discovered his powers when a blast of psionic energy just literally burst from his torso and destroyed much of his chest and face. It turns out that Chamber is literally composed of that same psionic energy, with his body just acting as a shell for it. When his powers burst out of him, the wound was replaced by a constant glow of psionic fire, leaving him unable to speak. Instead, he can only communicate telepathically. Additionally, he doesn't eat, drink, or even breathe, as he has literally no organs. It's just energy inside of him all the time. Chamber constantly created and unleashed psionic charges of energy that could strike with volatile force, being projected as a blast from his chest, a series of guided streams that struck specific targets, or as a massive eruption striking in all directions. If he was given the time to train properly, Chamber could have potentially been one of the most powerful mutants to walk the earth, but his powers make no sense. Okay, so many Inhumans have incredibly unique and awesome powers. Only Karnak's ability isn't so much a superpower as it is a learned skill, kind of like Hawkeye. Karnak never went through the process of Terrigenesis, which would have activated his Inhuman gene and given him actual powers. Since he never went through this process, he has all the enhancements of a regular Inhuman, including super strength, speed, stamina, and durability. But unlike other Inhumans, Karnak has trained himself to be an extremely powerful martial artist, and beyond that, he developed an incredibly powerful trait of being able to sense weak points, fracture planes, and stress points in enemies, objects, plans, arguments, and anything really, including concepts. Obviously, in combat, he can use this alongside his martial skills to defeat opponents even more quickly, but the applications outside of combat are incredibly useful as well. For an example, just one example, because that's really all I need, he found a weakness in death itself and was able to bring himself back to life, which you just win at that point, man. You're just done.
There are a lot of shapeshifters out there, but there are none that are quite like Ice Cream. Ice Cream is a mutant whose abilities allow him to turn into ice cream. That's it. That's what he can do. He was once a villain who was jealous of the X-Men and sought to take them down because their powers were a lot cooler than his. He felt that the X-Men made him look bad, running around doing cool stuff with all their cool powers. Admittedly, I think I would agree with him. However, how he thought he was going to take down the entire X-Men team with powers that simply allowed him to turn into ice cream, I do not know. Needless to say, it did not go well for Ice Cream in that endeavor. Is Ice Cream the villain with the weirdest powers? Let me know other villains that you feel like have very bizarre, unexplainable powers. It's time to get into some of the weirdness that is the Great Lakes Avengers. Being that this isn't the mainstay Avengers team, they are about as strange and in some cases unimpressive as you'd expect. Doorman is one of the members of the Great Lakes Avengers. As lackluster as his name is, his power can sometimes be very useful, but the issue with it is that it's so specific. So finding the right and best way to utilize it can be challenging. Although to his credit, I'd like to say that Doorman does a pretty good job with how and when he uses his powers. Doorman's powers allow him to create in essence a doorway to, or a door between adjacent areas that are separated by a wall. So he's kind of like a moving portal, which can be useful in some cases and much less useful in others. Chamber is a weird character, but also a beloved character. Like many weirdos that I love to talk about, Chamber is also a mutant. His name is Jonathan Starsmore, and while he may actually have the potential to be considered Omega level, that doesn't make his powers any less weird, let's be real. His power relates to the fact that he is actually made of pure psionic energy. When his powers first manifested as a result, they blew a massive hole in his chest and his face, blowing off his jaw. While many people would be immensely harmed or even killed by such an occurrence, Chamber was not. Jono, as a result, no longer needed to breathe, eat, or drink, and his blood even did not need to course through his veins to keep him alive. As such, he is typically seen with a scarf or some other clothing covering the lower half of his face, and he communicated telepathically as his jaw was blown off when his powers first emerged. Zeitgeist is known for his weird power, which when it first manifested, scarred the face of a young woman he happened to be making out with at the same time. His power is that he can produce acidic vomit, which I'm not really sure how you could best utilize that if you were fighting in a battle, and it would definitely make for quite the hazard if you just had the flu and you were feeling, super unwell, super nauseous. Zeitgeist does wear a protective mouthpiece to help prevent any other dangerous cases from happening, which is good because Zeitgeist's acid vomit is powerful enough that it can actually burn through, get this, solid steel. He is somewhat more durable than your normal mortal human, which of course makes sense if you were someone who can vomit, that level of acid. You'd have to be fairly durable to even be able to do that, to even be able to make that acid and live. Axel Clooney is a mutant and used to be the leader of the X-Force at one point, but more recently led the rival team to Ecstatics known as the Excellent. I honestly love Brew, and now his powers are basically the coolest around, but for a while there he wasn't really the coolest per se. You see, Brew may be a mutant, but he's also part of the Brood, so his mutant superpower was actually nothing quite so exciting as some of the others that are out there. Brew's mutant power and mutation actually made him compassionate, which for a Brood is actually a superpower really, as Brood don't really feel compassion, empathy, or sympathy like humans do, but for an X-Men, well, it's a little less impressive. It should be noted though that even though it doesn't sound impressive for a Brood, compassion is, like I said, it's pretty amazing to have as an ability, as Brood are typically unable to feel this emotion at all. And currently, Brew is also king of the Brood, so hey, there's also that. Penance was once the hero known as Speedball, who is now back to being Speedball again actually, thank goodness. His real name is Robert Baldwin. Baldwin decided to change up his superhero appearance and name following the instigating event that led to the first superhero civil war. In the comics this was similar to but different from the Sokovia Accords that we saw in the MCU. Similar in the sense that many people died, many of them in the case of the comics civilians, different in the sense that it wasn't a tragedy at a political gathering, but rather happened as a result of the New Warriors pursuing supervillains in the interest of their reality TV show. One person, Nitro, went off, killing a bunch of civilians and the rest of his teammates in the process, with Speedball being one of the few people to survive the incident. As a result, it was said that his powers had changed due to his guilt, and they could only be activated when he experienced physical pain. This caused Robert Baldwin to change his name and his appearance, being known as Penance in honor of all the lives lost that he felt responsible for, and wearing an Iron Maiden inspired supersuit covered in spikes, inward spikes. As many spikes as there were casualties, so that he could trigger his powers as needed. Not all mutants get to be as badass as folks like Vulcan or Storm. Case in point, Beak. Although Beak as a character is admittedly pretty cool and pretty brave, his mutant power is more of a physical mutation, which means that he is evidently not considered a favorite for many X-Men fans out there. Beak's powers, if you can call them that, leave him resembling a bird and also make him built like one, but initially in the comics he couldn't even fly. Beak has since figured out how to fly, or rather glide somewhat, but even still he can really only go very short distances, and even going short distances he doesn't really have a ton of tactical flying skills to speak of either. He's no angel, Fortunately though, Beak is still a really likable person and character, so he doesn't often need to rely on his mutant powers to be of use. Big Bertha. Oh boy. So Big Bertha can basically transform her body, adding mass, weight, and height as needed, and even controlling where the added mass goes specifically in regards to her figure and the added weight's distribution, which doesn't sound too bad on paper, right? But then the other part of it is that Big Bertha is actually Ashley Crawford, who was originally known for being a thin, tall runway supermodel. Ashley of course can transform from bigger to smaller as well, but to do so she actually has to vomit. I think you can see how this is pretty problematic, to put it lightly. More recently in the comics, Marvel tried to redeem the character and her power set, but needless to say, it's likely for this very reason that we haven't really seen Bertha around in the comics for some time. Tag is definitely one of the weirdest superheroes out there when it comes to his abilities. He is Brian Cruz, a mutant whose powers allow him to tag someone psionically, inciting a telepathic urge to either run away or run towards someone. Yeah, he's basically the game Tag incarnate. He could use his powers to tag multiple people, but if making them emit a psionic signal that encouraged others to run away from them, the range would actually top out at about 100 meters away. Then the urge for people to run away would just simply stop, so it's also got weird restrictions, to be honest. I mean, I guess you gotta have restrictions somewhere, right? Phantom X has to be one of the weirdest characters in all of Marvel Comics. He has a lot of powers that are strange, but one of the strangest is that his nervous system can turn into a flying ship. Yeah, it can turn into a flying ship. His nervous system also has a name and also even has pronouns. She is known as Eva, which is technically an acronym. Eva can separate herself from Phantom X and turn into a ship controlling herself, so she can fly herself around. And Phantom X can also sometimes control Eva, but it requires a lot of focus for him to do that. At first, she's not sentient, but can become a separate entity still, but as time goes on, she evolves and she changes. And even at one point when Phantom X seemingly dies, she herself turns into a humanoid being and does end up developing sentience. Eva also seems to have a symbiotic connection to Phantom X in the sense that if she is hurt, Phantom X can typically feel it. However, while she is separate from Phantom X, this means that he doesn't actually have a nervous system himself. All in all, Eva seems to be one of the weirdest powers, one of the weirdest things that I've just ever heard of. Not just within Marvel, but within maybe all of comics. Definitely up there for me.
Coming in at number 10 today is the Hulk. Now just hold on a sec before you get up in arms. Everyone knows the Hulk's ability to turn into a big old green monster and rip things apart with a strength that increases based on his anger. But what many of you may not know is that Hulk actually possesses a much more subtle ability to see astral projections and ghosts and even interact with them if he chooses to. Hulk's astral form perception has come in handy when working with Doctor Strange as a defender, but why does Hulk even have this ability in the first place? Well, Bruce Banner subconsciously feared his father's ghost would come back to haunt him, like literally come back to haunt him. And so, the Hulk just developed this mechanism to allow him to look out for that ghost. There isn't really more to it, that's just kind of it. Hulk just developed the ability that is something usually reserved for telepaths and magic users. For the super intelligent Bruce Banner, it would make a bit more sense, but it's actually been suggested that for Bruce, the clarity of the astral forms are diminished when compared to the telepathically resistant Hulk's ability to view them. With Immortal Hulk and the connection to the One Below All, perhaps that could serve as some kind of fan explanation, but that's all we got. Number 9, Dupe. This bumpy looking lima bean is and was basically the mascot of a bunch of different mutant teams in Marvel Comics, while also low-key being one of the heaviest hitters around. Dupe is unable to learn English, and as such he speaks in a language all of his own that everyone can somehow understand. According to Captain America, the US government created him in a secret weapons project and he was instrumental in the fall of the Soviet Union. But then, apparently, he also comes from a place called Marginalia, quote, the world between worlds and place that begins where the story ends. Which is basically to say that we don't actually know where he comes from for sure. The most surprising thing about Dupe though is his list of powers. It is long. He has possible omniscience, he's strong and durable enough to defeat Thor, he can heal from super serious wounds in seconds and resurrect himself, he has blinding speed, size alteration, energy projection, psionic fire, blasts and shields, he can perform quote, dupish magic and has the power of the funk. Oh, and Dupe's body also contains a nightmare dimension known as Dupeland, and he is able to access that by turning himself inside out. It's not just Dupe's powers that are weird, it's literally the whole package. He's weird. Number 8. Hindsight Lad. To be completely candid here, Hindsight Lad's powers are not actual powers, but he acts like they are, and that means I'm going to talk about it. Carton Lefroy was a nuisance before he ever became Hindsight Lad, but when he found out that his neighbor, Robbie Baldwin, was Speedball of the New Warriors, he threatened to reveal Robbie's secret identity unless Robbie let him be a part of the team. And he actually managed to prove very useful, and did have some tactical ability which eventually got him fully put on the team. He kind of became their guy in the chair, but that's because his self-given power was the power of hindsight. The power to look back at all the superhero fights that he's been a part of and analyze them, quote unquote, and now with the present hindsight, he can tell the heroes what they should have tried differently, which in his mind meant they can now go prepare for that exact same scenario if it plays out again, which in a comic book, that's probably not going to happen. Just saying. Number 7. El Guapo. Robbie Rodriguez, who goes by El Guapo, is a mutant from the Marvel Universe, but that kind of opens up a whole bunch of questions because Robbie doesn't seem to have any real powers of his own, unless you consider his symbiotic relationship with his flying skateboard a superpower. His wiki page refers to this as idiosyncratic manipulation, suggesting that Robbie actually does have total control over his skateboard. But the problem with that statement is that his skateboard has also acted with a mind of its own, like when it beat him up for cheating on his girlfriend. Now, an argument could be made that perhaps it's his own subconsciousness beating himself up for doing the wrong thing, but that's just a me theory, and Marvel did not state this to be true or even explain his ability at all, really. It's not telekinesis, and the board seems to have a mind of its own. It's weird. I don't know what to say. Number 6. Phantom X. When I first read a comic with Phantom X in it, I did not fully understand his power, and I still don't really. So now I'm gonna try and explain something to you guys that I do not understand. Cool? Cool. So basically, Phantom X, or Charlie Cluster 7, or Weapon 13, or John Philippe, was experimented on by Weapons Plus, and was genetically grown and evolved using Sentinel technology. Thanks to this, he actually has, or had, 3 brains for independent parallel processing, nanoactive blood, and his primary nervous system is actually a detachable techno-organism called Eva. So there's some stuff to break down there. Eva can fly herself and can generate bioelectric charges to be used in attacks, with Phantom X being both telepathically and symbiotically linked to Eva. His multiple brains allow him to think like a sort of supercomputer similar to Sage, but it also gives him access to 2 extra, quote, personalities, a charmer and a super deadly mutant hunter. He can create extremely powerful illusions and enter a trance state where he can rapidly heal himself, and his self-supremacy over his own body and mind allow him to overcome pretty much anything to complete his mission, including mind control. I can't talk too much more about him because of time, but know he has enhanced senses, is a dope fighter, and does not create any kind of odor from his own body. Just look into the guy, he's really weird, but he's also really cool. Number 5. Iska the Unbeaten. Iska is thousands of years old and is the sister of Genesis, who is the wife of Apocalypse, so fun little fact for you. She is a hardened warrior who respects power and strength like the other mutants of Araco, and her powers kind of reflect that. Iska's power is tychokinesis, which is the power over luck and probability, but specifically, her power means that she cannot lose, or the better way to say it is that she always wins. This includes one-on-one contests, votes, and wagers, but also larger battles where she is a member of a team or an army. In contests of skill, her powers might give her the talents she needs to win, or she might just win through, quote, improbable circumstances. So far, it's sounding pretty good. Always winning is so good, it just sounds like ridiculous and lazy writing. Because it kinda is. But it also means that in larger battles or wars, her powers weigh the probability of the 2 sides and literally make her defect from the losing side and join the winning side, even if the losing side was composed of those she truly cares about, meaning that even though she still technically won, she betrayed her closest friends and allies. Her power has also famously been used against her and one of her allies. When Tarn the Uncaring faced off against Magneto, the mutant Sunspot bet Iska that Tarn would win. So because she would be betting against Tarn, someone she's fought beside for thousands of years, he was actually easily wiped off the face of Mars by Magneto, who crushed his head like a cherry. Her power is really good, it's just got some really crummy loopholes sometimes. Number 4. Adam X. Adam Naramani is honestly quite a bit interesting. He was a genetically created hybrid of both Emperor Dekun of the Shi'ar Empire and Catherine Summers from Earth, created in an attempt to introduce more genealogies to the Shi'ar Empire. Now, just as his origin is unique, so are his powers. Adam has the ability of electrokinetic hymopyrokinesis, or if you don't want to hurt yourself trying to say that, you can also say sanguine combustion, which sounds way cooler. It basically means that he can send an electric surge through oxygenated blood, which leads to ignition of the electrolytes present in said blood, causing a person to burn from the inside out, which could result in a little subtle warming effect, or it could completely disintegrate a person, so there's a lot of wiggle room here. Thanks to his Shi'ar side of things though, he also has enhanced strength, agility, reflexes, stamina, speed, vision, and healing. Couple all that with his awesome fighting skills and the cool cybernetic retractable claws that he has, and Extreme, which is his name, is someone you probably don't want to mess with. Number 3. Tag. I actually kinda wish I had Brian Cruz's power. It just seems like the perfect chaos creating ability, and that to me is hilarious. Tag's ability, known as the pariah effect, allowed him to use a form of telepathy when he touched someone that caused the target to emit a psionic signal, which would make them a target for others to run away from or run towards. Whichever way people would run, they would do it while being fully aware of what they were doing, but unable to control themselves. If they were being controlled to run away, they would continue to do so until they were about 100 feet away. But if the signal caused them to run towards whoever was, quote, it, then they would dogpile on top of whoever that was. What's strange, other than everything about this, is that he could also control who was affected by the ability, but like how? He only made one person it, so how does he decide who runs away and who doesn't? He could also make whoever was it run away from themselves, which is just what? In other words, they would just run uncontrollably and in random directions, which is actually kind of hilarious. The fun thing about him is he would also always say, "You're it," which is kind of misleading because that person can't tag someone else or make them it. I don't know. It's weird, but it's really, really cool. Number 2, Cora of the Burning Heart. Can we please just get an applause for literally the coolest name ever? Cora of the Burning Heart is a mutant from Morocco where she served as an assassin and primarily used her power only to boost her own abilities in battle, thanks to the Iraqi being really stubborn, honor-bound fighters or whatever. But Cora's abilities can actually help others as well. Cora's heart is essentially an internalized combustion furnace, which generates life force energy. Thanks to that energy, she can get this really awesome looking flaming skeletal appearance, and she uses this constant energy source to give herself incredible physical capabilities, as well as boost up the powers of others around her to even greater heights. She was a member of the X-Terminators alongside Cable, and she is also part of SWORD. Also, Cora of the Burning Heart. Just wanted to say it again. Number 1, Chamber. Chamber, or Jonathan Evans Starsmore, discovered his powers when a blast of psionic energy that burst from his torso destroyed much of his chest and face. That doesn't sound good, but it turns out that Chamber is literally composed of that same psionic energy, with his body just acting as a shell for it. When his powers burst out of him, the wound was replaced by a constant glow of psionic fire, leaving him unable to speak. Instead, he can only communicate telepathically. Additionally, because he is made of energy, he does not eat, drink, or even breathe because he has no organs. Chamber constantly created and unleashed psionic charges of energy that could strike with volatile force, being projected as a blast from his chest, a series of guided streams that struck specific targets, or as a massive eruption striking in all directions. If he was given the time to train properly, Chamber could have potentially been one of the most powerful mutants to walk the earth. Also, in one story, he's used as literally like a jet engine on a spaceship. It's really weird, but super cool.
Starting off at number 10 with a bit of an honorable mention, we have Squirrel Girl's Squirrel Powers. Now, on paper, Doreen Green's power set doesn't seem that impressive, giving her increased strength, speed, and agility, and gifting her with a bushy squirrel tail from birth. However, it's the utilization of these powers that Squirrel Girl is apparently so gifted at, as this superhero has yet to be beaten by any villain in Marvel Comics. From MODOK to Thanos himself, all of these supervillains have been defeated by the unbeatable Squirrel Girl at one time or another, and while by this point it's just become a running joke that Squirrel Girl can defeat any villain off-panel, it's still an incredibly cool power set that makes Squirrel Girl one of my favorite young Avengers. Coming in at number 9, we have the Power Cosmic wielded by Galactus. One of the oldest beings in existence, Galactus was originally born in the multiverse that preceded the Marvel multiverse we know today, being the sole survivor of this reality and becoming an almost omnipotent devourer of planets in order to satisfy the massive amounts of power he now possesses. With enough power flowing through his veins to destroy multiple solar systems with a single attack, Galactus usually restrains himself and absorbs the life force of a single planet in order to sustain his tremendous strength, but could be so much more deadly if he ever chose to fully unleash Galactus's wrath. Coming in at number 8, we have the power of the Beyonder. Initially seeming to be completely unlimited in scope, the Beyonder's powers are some of the most fascinating in the Marvel universe, as he first appeared after creating an entirely new planet for the heroes and villains of the Marvel universe to wage a battle across. As the creator of this battle world, the Beyonder Beyonder sought to seek who was the most powerful hero in the universe, and was able to easily repel the combined attacks of both Galactus and Victor Von Doom. While more recent events in the Marvel timeline have made it clear that the Beyonder isn't quite at the top of the Marvel Universe's power level list like initially believed, he's still an incredibly powerful reality warping foe, and many of Marvel's heroes would find themselves forever altered by the secret war on Battleworld. Coming in at number 7, we have the Phoenix Force. While many people may associate the Phoenix Force with solely Jean Grey or various X-Men stories, the Phoenix Force is allegedly one of the oldest cosmic entities in the entire Marvel Universe. Claiming to be the fire from which all things are born, the Phoenix Force appears to be born from the void in between states of matter, and the true source of all psionic and telepathic abilities in the Marvel Universe. The Phoenix Force is also uniquely capable of absorbing life force from the universe itself to increase its own strength, shortening the lifespan of the entire cosmos in order to gain more physical strength. No matter which form the Phoenix takes, it's always an incredibly powerful and fiery being that you wouldn't want to mess with. Coming in at number 6, we have Thor's God Blast. Thor has always been one of the most powerful Avengers, but his recent ascension to the throne of Asgard have given him strengths that even he didn't know about previously. During a battle with the Black Winter, a force that sought to devour the entire Marvel multiverse, Thor stared at the possibility of the end of all things and was able to harness an attack called the God Blast. Calling forth generations upon generations worth of former Allfather's rage combined, Thor turned this energy into a massive explosive wave that was finally able to slow down the Black Winter's progress. But given as how it didn't actually kill the Black Winter, Thor, my dude, you really need to start going for the head. Coming in at number 5, we have Ghost Rider's Penance Stare. With a literal flaming skull for a head, Ghost Rider is obviously a supernatural powerhouse when it comes to fighting the forces of evil. But his strongest ability has to be his iconic Penance Stare, a psychic attack which overwhelms the target with all of the remorse and trauma of any pain they have caused through their sins. While dependent on the strength of the Ghost Rider in question, at a minimum, the stare will cause a target to go catatonic, putting an easy end to a difficult fight. But if a target feels true remorse for their actions and had done truly terrible things, they might flat out ignite into hellfire and just die on the spot. The only beings seemingly capable of ignoring the effects of the Penance Stare are those without any remorse at all, such as Thanos, the Punisher, and even Deadpool himself. Coming in at number 4, we have the powers of Null, the dark god of the symbiotes. Having spent most of this multiverse's existence locked away within the symbiote home planet of Clintar, Null was eager to show the universe the true extent of his powers once he was finally freed from his cage due to the scheming of Carnage. Capable of controlling any symbiote throughout the entire universe, Null was able to form the deadliest army the cosmos had ever seen, complete with powered-up symbiote dragons that were far more capable than any symbiote that had ever been seen before. And while Null eventually was able to be defeated through the power of the Avengers united with Venom, his powers now reside within Eddie Brock, who now has his hands full just learning how to control their basics. Coming in at number 3, we have the Tactagon, one of the most powerful weapons in all of Marvel history. A Deus Ex Machina in gun form, this alien weapon crash-landed on Earth long ago, before being discovered in the San Francisco Bay by a young teenage superhero. The weapon's power is simple. If you aim it at someone and shoot, the weapon will find a way to kill them, no matter the power level of whoever it was aimed at. The bullet will always adapt and find a way to still be a fatal weapon. Classified as an Omega level threat by the Avengers, this weapon was even capable of blasting a hole through the usually indestructible Ultimato, and has since had to be locked away deep underground under Avengers headquarters. Coming in at number 2, we have the powers of Franklin Richard, the son of Reed and Sue Richards, and the leader of the next generation of the Fantastic Four. Initially believed to be one of the most powerful mutants in all of existence, it was eventually revealed that Franklin's reality warping powers were so great that he'd altered his own X gene in the past to explain his powers as being of mutant origin. Capable of even creating entirely new universes, and with his power being listed as being equal to that of the original Celestials, and it's clear that Franklin Richards stands out on a tier of power almost entirely his own. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the powers of the Sentry. The closest thing the Marvel Universe has to a Superman equivalent, the Sentry gained his powers as the result of the Canadian government attempting to recreate the original Super Soldier Serum, but by creating a soldier 100,000 times more powerful. When the serum was stolen by a drug addict named Robert Reynolds, it somehow gifted him with the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns, splitting his psyche into both the Sentry and the Void, but creating an invulnerable superhero so strong he could rip the Carnage symbiote in half and even stop the rampaging of the Hulk. While other characters' cosmic powers may be flashier or have bigger outcomes, the Sentry's status as Earth's strongest defender could not be overstated until he was surprise attacked during Null's war on the cosmos.
And at number 10, probability manipulation. Let's begin with the basics. Domino is a mutant who has an ability called probability manipulation. This allows her to subliminally and psionically initiate random kinetic phenomena that affect probability in her favor by making improbable things occur within her line of sight. This is also often referred to her as having good luck, and causing her opponents to have bad luck. It's worth noting that this ability is only capable of letting highly improbable things to occur, not impossible things, so the probability is always grounded somewhat in reality, despite however absurd the events that occur are. Now this could range between a foe's equipment failing for them or causing an overloading nuclear reactor to shut down based on a stray shot of her weapon. And we still don't know the full extent of what her powers can do. Up next, number 9, she's a living weapon. While Domino is a mutant, it's uncertain as to whether she always had the X gene or it was something that was altered with her body when she was a child. Domino was actually born in a secret government breeding program called Perfect Weapon, which sought to breed and then train living weapons, herself included. The experiment went a little haywire, and Domino was assumed to have been the only one who survived. Now this is where her pale skin and the tattoo over her eye comes in the comics. Where she got it from. Moving on to number 8, enhanced agility and reflexes. When you hear enhanced agility and reflexes, you're probably thinking it's a bit of a cop-out number. Most superheroes have that under their roster of skills. But Domino's agility and reflexes have a little extra something. As a byproduct of her probability skills, her cerebral cortex actually emits a current of bioelectric pulses down her spine. These pulses instinctively guide her movements when she's in danger or in combat, and with her additional training of her natural reflexes and agility, this has augmented those skills to near superhuman levels. Moving on to number 7, she's a master markswoman. Domino knows her way around a firearm. Nina is skilled with various kinds of guns and explosives. She's got effortless accuracy and is extremely skilled when it comes to hitting targets or foes. Now after she escaped the Perfect Weapon program, smuggled out by her biological mother, Nina was left with a priest in a church who would eventually raise her. Now despite the time she spent there, all of the training and the experimentation from the Perfect Weapon program was just too dominant in her, so she left and became a mercenary. And a damn good one at that, putting all of her combat skills to use. And in addition to that, her probability manipulation lets her make impossible shots, hitting her targets when normally the chances of her making certain risky shots would be very low. Up next at 6, leadership skills. Domino has some serious leader chops, my friends. Aside from being a pretty good team player, she's been a member of the X-Force for God knows how long, Domino has also led her own teams. She took over leadership of Deadpool's Mercs for Money group, which was a mercenary group that attempted to use Deadpool's fame to make a ton of profit. Wade was pretty terrible at managing the group, so Domino stepped up and took over, and also shut Wade out. She also led an X corporation when Charles Xavier put her in charge of one of the branches that was dedicated to improving the welfare of mutants' lives. Unfortunately, this ended badly for Domino when her partner Risk was murdered. Moving on to number 5, she's an expert in martial arts. Okay, bit of an obvious number here, but one that is quite true. Domino's a pretty impressive athlete. Nina has been trained extensively in various martial arts and combines her skills with firearms in combat with these techniques in order to pack an effective punch. Or shot, rather. or both. She's highly skilled in hand-to-hand combat, and she's also an excellent swimmer, and has been considered an Olympic gold level athlete. Now speaking of obvious numbers, let's move on to another one that should be a given. In at 4, she is a master assassin. Much of Domino's time on X-Force was all about flexing one of her best skills, being an assassin. Sure, she is a great mercenary, but with her probability-based mutation and all of her training, being an assassin kinda comes naturally to her. She's also been in situations where she's had to kill before, like the time she needed to protect her brother Lazarus from their birth mother, who attempted to murder him after losing her sanity. In at 3, Gallinohphobia. Okay, so yes, this is a weakness rather than a superpower, but let's get real for a sec, friends. We have 10 numbers to fill, and our girl really only has 9 points to talk about. Also, this is a very surprising fact unless you've read volume 3 of Deadpool. You know, you probably wouldn't know this. Domino has something called Gallinohphobia. What's that? It's a fear of chickens. Roosters. Anything that clucks and walks with 2 legs and potentially lays eggs. When Domino is working alongside Wolverine in issue 18 of that series that we just mentioned, they're crawling through an air vent when Domino is frozen in fear of a chicken that also happens to be in the air vent. It's a pretty hilarious moment. And when Deadpool asks her about this fear, she won't tell him why, and instead throws him out of a window. Moving on to number 2, she's lucky with death. Domino's probability manipulation, or good luck rather, doesn't just extend to the environment and individuals around her. It also keeps her alive. There's been multiple instances in the comics where we've seen her outlive a situation in which normally she would probably be dead. For example, Nina, whose last name is Thurman, was actually married to a dude named Milo Thurman. It was a brief marriage, with her having been hired to protect the scientist early on in her career. The two fell in love, got hitched, but then separated when Milo thought she had been killed. But surprise surprise, not the case. And in the recent Deadpool 2 film, in which Domino was portrayed by Zazie Beetz, the character is the only one aside from Deadpool to survive a parachute jump in which all other members of the X-Force were killed. Good luck does come in handy. And finally, in at number 1, unconscious ability. Domino's mutant abilities are ones that she does not have control over, like 0 control, or maybe like 1% control, but we'll get to that in a sec. Her good luck is a subconscious ability, psionically initiating random telekinetic acts that she has no actual power over. It just happens. For the most part, it's triggered when she is in a stressful situation, with the effect of this power constantly emanating from her body. That being said, she needs to be engaged in a situation in which that power will be triggered. In order for her luck to take effect, she needs to be participating in an action in which she can affect the chance of the situation. There has been one situation though in which she was able to consciously use her powers, not 1%, affecting the probability fields of storm clouds above a group of ONE sentinels, with lightning striking them down. She's been working hard at practicing having cognitive control over her abilities for years now. In recent times, Domino actually has been struggling a bit with her powers coming in and out during the recent X-Force series, so here's hoping she gets a better grasp on it.
Number 10. Stepping discs. While many people think of Illyana's magical abilities and her soul sword, it becomes easy to forget sometimes that while a powerful Maggot, she is also a mutant, and that magic itself is not her mutant ability, but rather something that she was just trained in. Her mutant powers involve teleportation. She can teleport herself and other people through space and even through time, teleporting people as far away distance-wise as another planet. Her teleportation discs, however, are connected to limbo, meaning that whenever you move through one of her teleportation portals, you must first pass through limbo in order to get where you're going. It's still debated as to whether or not this is an inherent part of her mutant ability, or whether or not it was influenced by her time spent in limbo as a child when she was kidnapped. I like how I just keep alluding to that, but I'm not actually giving you anything else. I swear there's a point where I'm going to explain that a bit more. Number 9. Mirror Navigation System, also known as scrying. It's like Google Maps, but in a mirror. Illyana can call up a scrying glass to help her see where she is going, what it looks like inside and out, and also use it like a map to guide her to that place. She has done this before while in limbo. It's basically like Google Maps complete with Street View. And she can even use the glass to see the history of a place, learn about how it was created or made, something Google Maps doesn't have yet, but maybe one day. You can Google it though. You could be like, who made this church? When was it made? How was it made? Number 8. Queen of Limbo. Due to Magic's connection to the Limbo dimension, she is insanely powerful there. This power comes from years and years of training to harness the Limbo energy. As such, she basically is the Queen of Limbo and is basically at god level when she is there. Limbo is also known as the Other Place. It is a magical dimension filled with demons and was originally ruled by the demon Belasco, who kidnapped Illyana when she was just a child. She was kind of like his apprentice / adopted adopted child / potential future love interest until she overthrew him. And it's less like the religious limbo and more like a pocket dimension just filled with demons. To be honest, it's actually a surprise to me that she doesn't use this power more in battle. When you think about it, she could just teleport you to limbo if you were fighting her and then just do whatever she wanted with you there later. She really doesn't even need to use her soul sword most of the time, but I guess it just makes her feel cool and she thinks she looks cooler, so sometimes she prefers it to just doing away with you in limbo or teleporting you just, like off in the middle of space. That's what I would do. Number 7. Control over demons. As the ruler of Limbo, Magik has control of demons within that realm. Even Saim, a demon who was originally Belasco's servant, was converted to her side. Also, sorry if my pronunciation offends you, I don't know how to speak demon. After being sent after Magik to recapture her, she sneakily defeated Saim with magic and made him swear allegiance to her. Saim even remained loyal to her for a time before attempting to overthrow her rule of Limbo and control the domain himself. But for a time he was a very powerful ally, and even without him, Ilyana has proved how powerful the connection to the demon realm of Limbo is by summoning demons to do her bidding. Number 6. Psionic Shields. This was more of a power that was touched on in older comics and now seems to have been somewhat forgotten. It was more of a power that Magik leaned on when she wasn't as powerful with her magics or as accurate of a teleporter. She could use her psychic shields to protect herself against extremely powerful telepaths, including Charles Xavier. However, it has been shown that some of the most powerful telepaths can still get through her psionic defenses. Number 5. Eldritch Armor. This power is also one that isn't as often remembered. It comes from Ilyana's ties to Limbo actually. As ruler of Limbo, she is granted magical armor, which can be summoned simply from her using her magical abilities, although it has also been shown to be summoned simply through concentration. Typically, the more that Ilyana continues to use magic, the more that the armor will appear on her, eventually covering her whole body, but beginning to be assembled starting with her left side. It's important if you want to know all the facts about this armor. The armor, being magical, is lightweight and it protects her against magic. As time has progressed in the comics, however, her armor seems to have also come up less and appears to be less of a power, but perhaps she's also grown so strong that she feels like it is less needed, or maybe it's just been incorporated into her look and it just gets skipped over as an ability. But it's still there, we just don't really notice it. She's got a weird like little hat thing, so I always thought that was part of her armor. Number 4. Energy Blasts. Ilyana can focus and channel Limbo energy through herself and emit it in blast form, kinda like Cyclops but with magic. Although really, they're both creating blasts through channeling energy from another plane, so actually not that far off from Cyclops. She can generally use this energy to shock or blast opponents away. She can also emit energy blasts from her soul sword. Number 3. Astral Projection. An ability often used by telepaths. As a powerful mage, Ilyana can also leave her own body, projecting her astral self out into the world. She shares this ability with other powerful mages of the Marvelverse like Doctor Strange. Ilyana often uses this ability to scout out places while in her astral form, which usually also conceals her from detection, of course unless other telepaths or magic users happen to be around. She can also transport herself to the astral plane while projecting and battle there, like most other telepaths. Not that she's a telepath. She's not a telepath, just so you know. Number 2. Healing Fire. The cool thing about having magical abilities is that you can kinda do almost anything. For Magik, this includes healing. She has in her repertoire a healing ritual or spell. When she casts it, like in New Mutants Volume 1 Issue 17, it encircles her within a pentagram of white, hot flames. These flames then engulf her body and can heal her. Ilyana herself is actually known to be skilled in both black and white magic, and her white magic knowledge actually came from an alternate version of Storm. True facts. Number 1. Can become invisible. Training with Doctor Strange made Magik even more powerful. She already has all the knowledge imparted to her by alternate Storm and Belasco and all of his magical texts, so adding in the teachings of Doctor Strange has made her kind of an insane level of powerful when it comes to her magic use. At one point she used her knowledge to turn herself and a group of other supers, including mutants and some Guardians of the Galaxy members, invisible. In a gambit to buy time when her teleportation powers just couldn't quite cut it. Because if you can't teleport people somewhere, just turn them all invisible and it'll all be fine.